Robert Stark. I'm joined here with Ryan England. We're going to be discussing the alt-left. Ryan, it's great having you on the show. You have your own alt-left blog.
Yes, I do.
And I'm also joined here with my co-host, Alex Goldstein.
Hey, Ryan. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Alex. Good to meet you.
So, Rabbit and possibly Robert Lindsay might be joining us later in the show to be discussing some of the new issues coming about with the alt-left. But to start things off, Ryan, tell us about yourself. You said you kind of got exposed to censorship early on, and censorship originally there was from your Catholic school, but then you were later exposed to censorship from the left. Can you tell your story and how that led to the views that you have now?
I think we've all heard about the satanic panic that swept during the 1980s. There was a lot of concern about alleged satanic cult activity, and that was expressed in, among other things, a rather infamous Geraldo Rivera special on the topic that aired somewhere, I forget exactly when, 88 or 89. Known as ill fortune would have it, I guess. I was a big fan of heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons, and I wasn't really part of the in crowd, so... next thing I knew, I was facing all kinds of accusations and harassment, not just from the teachers, but my own parents, my own peers, and all kinds of course, very baseless fears that I was into cult activity. And if you want to know about how it kind of came from the left, I had been exposed to views from other quarters among family and friends. They had advised me that heavy metal and gaming was predominantly a white male pastime, and none of them would really kind of come out and say it, but it was implied that this was kind of a bad thing. If it was enjoyed by predominantly white males, the subtext was that it had to be racist and sexist.
And I think it's important to point that out because there's this perception that the whole SJW craze is a recent phenomenon.
Oh no, it isn't. All of that stuff that, like, say, Anita Sarkeesian has been saying, that's not new. That's been going on. It wasn't even new back in the late 1980s when I was hearing it.
So you became active on the left in the 90s? And you were influenced by reading like Noam Chomsky. And can you talk about how you got involved in politics?
Well, my family was very politically minded. We were all across the spectrum. As every white male, my home province of Alberta was, my father was conservative to a fault. The name Trudeau would raise his blood pressure, as indeed it did so many of the men of that generation. My mother and my brother were more progressive. My mom rather, was involved in co-opting and a lot of associations of the Democratic Socialist movement there. A lot of associations of the Democratic Socialist movement there, and my brother had gotten quite involved in leftist thinking late in high school, early university.
Ryan, can I ask you a question about Canada during this time?
By all means.
It seems that there was a you have this sort of like managerial state, like a therapeutic state that sort of seems like it's meant to progress the lives of individuals and enlighten them to new lifestyle choices and stuff like that. And it seems like that happened in Canada before it happened in the United States. I mean, in the United States, we're sort of experiencing that in like a peak overdrive now, but it seems like that happened in Canada much earlier.
Trudeau, Pierre, not Justin, was I mean, he was an advocate, and there had been bilingual legislation and multiculturalism in Canada going all the way back to the 1970s. And what's funny about it is there was never really a lot of opposition to it. Some grumbling out here in the West. Western Canada is generally quite a bit more conservative. The province of Alberta especially, although that's changing somewhat, we actually have an NDP government now. And if you don't know, the NDP are almost like European socialists or social democrats. So that's kind of an odd thing to have happen. And, of course, there was grumbling about it from the Quebecois separatists, too. But, yeah, that's been going on here for quite some time.
When you were on the left, were you strongly opposed to sort of like a Bill Clinton and neoliberalism?
Yeah, I didn't like it. I thought Clinton had completely sold out the working class. Donald Trump, of all people, is actually very, very right about that. NAFTA was a bad thing. It was bad for us, and it was bad for you guys, I understand, for America. A lot of manufacturing job losses and so on. Yeah, Clinton it really looked to me like he sold out.
And with your political evolution, you've also gone into a lot of these thinkers like Camille Paglia. And you also mentioned Kathy Young and Christina Hoff Sommers, who are critics of radical feminism.
A little bit later in the 90s, I had gotten into, I had read The Myth of Male Power by Warren Farrell, and that book really got to me. It seemed like it was really telling some hard-hitting truths. But those were also ideas that you simply didn't hear discussed on the left. So, I'd started
What is that book about?
The Myth of Male Power is, I guess, exactly what it sounds like. The basic gist of it is that this radical feminist notion that men constitute a class that has managed to arrange everything to be wonderful for itself at women's expense is simply not true. Farrell's thesis was that societies have typically conditioned men, at least men of the lower classes, to be disposable.
In what sense, disposable?
In the sense that, for example, for the overwhelming majority of military history, eligibility for the draft was exclusively male. A lot of employment, a lot of professions where there are high rates of injury or death or deterioration of health due to the working conditions.
And you actually recently wrote an article about this topic. Like you posted statistics like what jobs and by gender have like the highest rate of workplace injuries or death.
And those jobs are predominantly, in fact, almost overwhelmingly male.
So were you a feminist before you had read that? Did you consider yourself to be like a male feminist?
Not in the sense that it was today. I mean, the thing about the way that I was, even at the height of my leftism, I wasn't as fond of the identity politics side of it. My interest was in labor, economic class, things like that. Still is, by and large. I sympathized with many feminist causes, but it wasn't really the thing that moved me.
So, you actually went through a period where you went to becoming a conservative, and then you were in a labor union, and you felt sort of pressured to be on the left. And from there, you discovered the alt-right, and then that led you to the alt-left. Can you talk about like your further political journey and what eventually led you to discover the alt-left, even though, in a sense, you've had sort of these alt-left views for a large portion of your life?
Well, after reading stuff like Warren Farrell and Christina Hoff Sommers and so on, I had really lost faith in the establishment on the left. I still, of course, have a lot of issues with it. But I figured, well, if the left is no good, then let's have a look at the political right. And some of it did resonate with me. The thing that I noticed very, very quickly about right-wing politics in the Western world is that there was this real sort of bait and switch element about it. I don't know if you're familiar with a book called "What's the Matter with Kansas" by
oh yeah, and he also
Wake Up Liberal or something. Is this new?
Yeah,
book?
I wrote a recent book called "Wake Up Liberal."
Listen, liberal. Yeah.
Listen, liberal. Yeah.
But what Frank's thesis was, and what my experience was that conservatives would sort of run on some of these social issues and these community issues, and they would talk about the decline of communities and loss of jobs and outsourcing and decline of the family and this sort of thing. But once in power, conservatives were largely all about tax cuts for the big corporations and free trade deals and so on. So I lost faith in them too.
What's interesting, I don't want to go on a long Trump tangent, but his economic policy is kind of like a hybrid of like conservatism and populist ideas. On one hand, he's speaking out against the trade deals, but he supports tax cuts for the rich. So his economic policies are a kind of a mixed bag.
Robert, that's very similar to Pat Buchanan, who... Pat Buchanan was very against NAFTA, but at the same time, he had like free market, classical liberal principles, but solely because they were populist and they aided the working class.
Yeah, in a sense, yes. And the funny thing is you almost get the mirror image of that out of the Democrats. I mean, you look at Hillary and certainly her husband back in the 90s, and they were all about free trade. NAFTA, they kind of like this Trans-Pacific Partnership thing. They like stuff like that, but then they talk about regulating Wall Street, which of course they never do once they're in power. They talk about taxing the wealthy a bit more.
Bill was the guy who got rid of Glass-Steagall.
I'm sorry?
Bill Clinton was the person who dismantled Glass-Steagall when he was president.
Yeah. I mean, he was the most neoliberal president. I mean, on economic issues, he's well to the right of Reagan.
Yeah, Keith Preston has stated that the United States, it's far right on everything except for, or the government of the U.S. is far right on everything except for culture. The culture is as far left as possible, and everything else is super far right, and it's basically like rainbow fascism.
That's a good name for it. I'm going to remember that one.
Before you discovered the alt-left, did you go through an alt-right phase? Or you went right to the alt-left?
Yeah, I looked into the alt-right, and I actually saw the page, the blog alternative right, when it was still kind of a new thing. And I did kind of look into it because I thought, hey, like maybe there are some conservatives here that seem to be getting it. It was quite the emphasis was very strongly on race, white nationalism, that sort of thing. I just that never really struck a chord with me.
And then you found out about the alt-left. You've discovered it fairly recently through Robert Lindsay's blog and through Rabbit's website.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing about the discovery of the alt-right, and I had noticed that they seem to be going back to some very to fundamentals in right-wing thought. And I wonder, well, if they can do it, then maybe maybe something kind of comparable to that can happen on the left too. So yes, I basically just Google searched it, and I found Countercurrents. The page was called, and it had an article by Rabbit, and I also found Robert Lindsay's there as well.
So Rabbit just joined us. Rabbit, great having you on.
Hey.
So Ryan was talking about how he discovered the alt-left, and one of the first things he stumbled across was that article on Countercurrents about your alt-left manifesto. Ryan, do you want to talk about how you continue with the discovering the alt left?
Okay, well, yeah, I Google searched it. I read Rabbit's. I read his article there, and I read a lot of the stuff by Robert Lindsay too. And I mean, I didn't agree with all of it, but I really did agree with the vast majority of it. And it's like, finally, I'm not politically homeless anymore. That was really how I felt when I discovered it, because until then I had always sort of gone back and forth. The social justice warriors would annoy me, so I'd kind of move right a bit, but then the neocons or the religious right or somebody like that would get stupid, and I'd get bored with them. You know, when I started reading stuff by Rabbit and by Robert Lindsay, it was like, hey, right on.
And you also wrote this article about the different factions of the alternative left. And one of the factions you mentioned is the left wing of the alt-right. And that probably describes a lot of us here. But originally, the original context of that term was some other blogger, I forget who it was, said that Robert Lindsay was the left wing of the alt-right. So he said, why don't I start the alt-left? And that's actually what gave him the idea to start up the alt-left.
Aren't the four of us the left wing of the alt-right?
Robert Lindsay just joined the show. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, hi. Hi, everybody. Hi, Ryan. Who's there? Who's there?
Ryan England, Alex Goldstein, and Rabbit. So do you want to comment about
Rabbit's there too?
Do you want to comment about who called you the left wing of the alt-right?
Yeah, is that site called The Right Stuff or something like that? Is that an alt-right site?
Yeah, rightstuff.biz.
Yeah, kind of a notorious one, kind of Nazi-like.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I used to go over there sometimes for some reason. I don't know how I ended up over there, but I think maybe they linked to me or something. And there were commenters on there, and they said every now and then they say, "What's alternative left?" And someone would say, "Oh, alternative left is Robert Lindsay." Because Nazis would say that. And I was like, whoa, man. Oh, that's cool. Alternative left. And then I think one of them said, yeah, Robert Lindsay, that's like the left wing of the alt-right. Oh, yeah, cool. And that's actually how I call myself that. I got named that by Nazis. So. Thank you, Nazis.
And Ryan, in your article, can you describe what you mean by the left wing of the alt-right? And you also, it's important to point out, you consider that a legitimate faction, because also there's been some kind of a purging effort against that wing. Talk about the left wing of the alt-right and your thoughts are on the whole purging.
Well, my understanding of it is that the left wing of the alt-right uses terms like red pill, right? Like you're red pilled. You now understand the way things really work. Okay, the alt-right is red pilled on race and sometimes on gender. But, you know, and I just wrote an article about this today. There's one thing that was missing, and that was economic class. So I think of it as being people maybe with alt-right sympathies, even if they're not all the way over into race supremacism, but they don't, you know, they know this whole multiculturalism thing's not working out and it can't work out. But alongside of that, they have at least maybe a social democratic, if not socialist, ideas on economics. So
right. Yeah, I mean, I would say that's an accurate characterization in my views. I think, you know, a lot of people in the alt-left or the left wing of the alt-right are people who see a lot of alt-right people and factions in the alt-right as kind of as allies, but you know, once it gets into the radical traditionalist stuff, or you have a lot of the post-libertarian economic people that have creeped in over there, and just some of the ideas where you're just like, okay, well, I realize I'm not quite like one of these guys, you know. So that's kind of like what the left wing the alt-right, or at least what my alt-left is about.
And Robert Lindsay, do you identify with that wing pretty much as well?
Yeah, I'm also a brocialist, I think.
Yeah, it's one of the wings. Can you explain what a brocialist is? It's like
it's not like the
pro-male socialist.
The left, isn't that like the left wing of the MRAs and the PUAs and gay guys and all that stuff? I mean, that's what I'm into. Men's rights and kind of anti-feminism in a sense.
Well, Robert, you said that movement originally, when it got started, it wasn't as right-wing as it is now.
There was a left wing of the men's rights movement. It was called Men's Liberation, and they got into some stupid stuff. But I actually like them. You can go back and read their stuff. And they were originally. It's like Warren Farrell. They were allied with the feminists, But then the feminists just being, they're just psycho bitches. They started saying women only spaces, and what are men doing in these spaces? And, hey, men have no right to comment on the problems of, they just started being really anti-male and stuff. And then some of the men's liberation guys are going, hey, screw these bitches, man. Actually, some gay men were some of the best men's liberation guys. There were gay men involved in that. That was one of the ways this movement was kind of stupid, but they'd get up and say things like, hey, we need to get in touch with our feelings towards men and stuff, like encouraging each other to do gay stuff. But yeah, I think they took it too far. But I think it kind of fell apart in the mid-70s or something. I think it was a gay guy who finally said, "Look, man, these feminists are not the allies of men. Come on, guys, these bitches are not our allies." Come on. He wrote a really good track. It's 1975. I think it's still up.
One other faction is the Gamergate leftists in this article, and this kind of overlaps with that group. And what's interesting about the whole Gamergate thing is what was happening is that all these SJWs were telling these guys that, they had like a white male privilege and all that nonsense. And a lot of them were looking at themselves, and they had like low social or economic status in society, and that's kind of was a pathway to either the alt-right or the alt-left for them.
Very classic examples of what you're talking about there would be YouTubers like, say, Sargon of Akkad or The Amazing Atheist. These people have made journeys from economic libertarianism into being, like, avid, in some cases, supporters of Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. I think because they've discovered that the kind of freedom that economic libertarianism offers is really quite fraudulent. I mean, you're not free if you have nothing but your labor power to sell and an empty stomach.
Yeah, sure. I want to ask Ryan something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask, what's the difference between a brocialist and a Gamergate leftist?
Well, there's quite a bit of overlap. I think that the Gamergate leftists are more very specifically culturally libertarian and anti-SJW. There's a fair number of them on the anti-SJW pages on Facebook. A brocialist, on the other hand, is much more men's rights. And you mentioned Warren Farrell. And I mean, the myth of male power reads almost like Marx to me. Like, it's all about the immiseration of the lower classes of men. It read like The Condition of the Working Class in England by Friedrich Engels, published in 1850. Same kind of thing. They're dying in industrial accidents, and, they're the candy fodder for the rich and powerful and that sort of thing.
And then you have the Red Enlightenment, and these people are passionate about rationalism and skepticism. But you're also saying these are the people interested in transhumanism and futurism, and they tend to be very scientifically minded or even technocratic. Rabbit, do you think that implies to you that description of the Red Enlightenment?
Yeah, a little bit. I think you see a lot of that, particularly in the the Silicon Valley people, not the tech people who are just more technologically oriented, like transhumanists, but kind of like a less transhumanist. Yeah, you definitely see those because you have to probably like a right wing transhumanist would be someone maybe like Peter Thiel or some of those kind of guys. But then the left wing ones would be what's that guy's name? Hughes. But I don't know. That's kind of that's a mixed group. I feel like a lot of those would fit into the other groups, at least with some of their views.
And yeah, what's interesting is a lot of these groups overlap, but there's obviously going to be areas where there's a conflict. This other group, in Ryan's article, he describes as true liberals, and he describes them as anti-racist and feminist supporters who think the whole thing has gotten, the whole SJW thing has gone overboard. And these
that's me.
Wait, Robert Lindsay, you're saying you're true left?
I'm a true liberal, yeah.
Yeah, but the guy...
I am still feminist. I'm not an anti-racist because they've gone insane. I'm a non-racist.
But Robert, like, you said you're still a feminist?
Yeah, I support equity feminism.
Oh, okay.
It's gender feminism.
Yeah, so
equal rights for women.
So this is a place where, like, maybe you and I are on the same page here. We're like, I'm not a... What's that? Like, I'm not a white nationalist, but I, understand human biodiversity is a real thing.
Yeah.
And that's a tricky place to be in, It's a tricky place to be in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because you're going to get it from both sides. The SJWs are going to say that you're white supremacists, and that the alt-right are going to say you're a cuck, basically.
Well, they're just going to call me a Jew, so...
Actually, the alt-right has been way nicer to me than the SJWs.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Oh, no.
Look, my last name is Goldstein, and neo-Nazis are nicer to me than these commie fucktards.
Yeah. And the alt-right kind of leaves me alone. They don't bug me. They're nice. So. I mean, they're Nazis, but they're nice. I guess I'll tolerate them, I guess.
And then you have the Red Templars, and these people who are like anti-Islamic, and a lot of these are the kind of people who are into like Bill Maher and her CLE. With these groups, I know with the left wing of the alt-right, like overlaps with like a paleoconservatism in the sense that a lot of those types like really admire people like Pat Buchanan. With the Red Templars group, would you say there's some overlap with like a neoconservatism?
I think there can be. Again, I think that this group would be, to strip it down, I mean, they're as willing today to be as critical of Islamic theology as they were of Christian theology not very long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it. I mean, not all of that long ago, the Islamists, the Mujahideen, we were on their side when they were fighting the communists, when they were fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan. It makes sense for left-wing people to be anti-Islamic in a lot of respects, because what could really be more opposite a materialist and liberal outlook on life? I mean, much of the Muslim world has not come out of the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
And then the other group is the new old left. And these are people kind of like who are primarily focused on economic issues like labor unions, economic leftism.
That's me. That's me, definitely.
Yeah, that's Ryan. That's Ryan. That's him.
I could give you a primer on classic economic Marxism if that's what you wanted.
So that's the thing, is there's all these different groups, and not everyone's going to fit into one of these groups. There's a lot of degree of overlap. But the question is, there's going to be some areas of conflict. And what's going on right now is there's all these new people coming in. And my theory about a lot of the new people is that a lot of them are disgruntled, disillusioned Bernie Sanders supporters, and they're unhappy about Hillary Clinton. They see her for what she is, but the problem is they're bringing in a lot of their politically correct baggage from like the mainstream left, and now it's gone into the point where you have all these new people joining the alt-left, and they're saying that the original people like Robert Lindsay and Rabbit don't belong. Robert Lindsay, do you want to comment on that first?
What they're throwing the founders out of the movement, the entryists, is that what you're talking about? Yeah, well, they're entryists, just like Rabbit was talking about entryists the other day. This movement is sort of being taken out by entryists. Yeah, that's right.
Well,
Rabbit and I are still the founders, and Rabbit's got the alt-left domain, and he ain't leaving. So when they go search for alt-left, they're going to land right on Rabbit's page, So.
Yeah, if you search for alt-left, you find those stupid articles saying that the alt-left supports Hillary Clinton and they're like Black Lives Matter. Then you see Rabbit's page, and that's basically it.
I really think we need to shout these people down. These right-wingers who have decided that alt-left is Hillary and Sanders and Black Lives Matter. And, it's just wrong, man. That ain't us. It's wrong.
Well, because Rabbit has the domain name, though, it actually might work in our favor. So if all these people want to say, oh, well, the alt-right's really bad, but look at what the alt-left's doing. The alt-left is like firebombing Republican headquarters. And, people start Googling alt-left, and it goes to Rabbit's site. Well, that's... they're like, oh, well, it's not what they're talking about. Well, I don't know, Rabbit. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. Since I own alt-left.com, no matter who uses the term for any reason, like all it does is increase the popularity of my site, because that's going to be it has a really high Google ranking, because it's been around it's been linked to so many times by so many different sites that it's going to come up, on the first page. And what really bothers me is just the lack of I guess, intellectual curiosity among these new people, because it's like they come into this thing and, they decide to start using a name before even looking up to see if it exists. Like I mentioned this on a previous show. It's like when, if you were going to start a band or something, and it turns out there's already a famous band with that name, but you didn't even bother to look up and see if one existed. And, you start a band and you start calling it, some band that's already
the Beatles?
Established or something. If these people don't think that, we should be a part of the alt-left, well, we are the alt-left. If you don't like it, then you need to come up with a new name for what it is that you want to be.
Well, Rabbit,
because we're not going anywhere.
Do you want to comment on these entryists who are saying that Rabbit and Robert Lindsay, the original members, don't belong?
I don't really see. I'm not sure who they are that they can make that assessment.
So you're trying.
I think those entryists are going to end up being the wing. And there's just going to be all these wings of the movement. Some of them are going to hate each other, and they're just going to say, "Oh, well, we don't associate with those guys. We don't consider them all that." But it's just going to be this great big tent, and some of us are going to hate each other.
Well,
if they want to call themselves alt-left, then go ahead and do it. I'm not going to say you're not. We just got a different idea of it.
I was on Facebook chat with Robert Lindsay, Monty Python and the Life of Brian. It's the Judean People's Front versus the People's Front of Judea. And even more than Romans, they hate one another. And I think that this has happened on the political left time and time again throughout its history. They seem to be headed to the same place.
So you're saying that the left ends up, the factions of the left end up hating each other more than sort of aiming at an opposition?
That very frequently happens. If you've ever seen that scene in very, very cleverly spoofed in Monty Python's Life of Brian, if there's anybody we hate more than the Romans, it's the fucking People's Front of Judea. And when that scene was recorded back in the mid-'70s, they were making fun of the way basically the British hard left was at the time. They've always been that way. So I think you're going to see this breaking apart, and it's going to just become a number of separate strands. That's where it looks to be going that way.
Ryan, can I ask you a question about this? It seems that I think a problem with this is that the right can always even though the right can have a lot of splintering. Like there's
hello. I'm waiting.
There's a lot of splintering on the alt-right. They can unify with one another because they say that race is a biological reality and gender is a biological reality. They can sort of unite on that. But it seems that problem with the left, a problem with liberalism, is that there are never really clear definitions. There's a difference between a Marxian socialist and a Fabian socialist. There's a difference between Jack London or H.L. Mencken's leftism on one hand, and then say Augustus Comte or John Stuart Mill's leftism on another hand. There seems to be a lot of interpretations as to what liberalism is or what leftism is as an idea. And I think that will.
But you can make the same case with conservatism or right wing.
But the far right can
become kind of.
But the alt right can still unify based on the idea that that there is a such thing. Human beings are different and genders are different. They can still unify on that principle.
Well, I noticed with the alt right, there are some people in the alt right who would say that someone like Rabbit doesn't belong because he's too liberal. But there isn't the same degree of – it's just kind of saying we disagree, but it's not the same degree of hostility that you're seeing from these alt-left entryists. The alt-right sort of does have some core principles they agree upon, even though they may have different fragments that fight against each other.
Well, wait a minute. The alt-right, though, does have a lot of the same problems because – what's happening with these people, and you see it now with a lot of these Trump supporter, the entryists into the alt-right, is that you have people, and this is the alt-left also, that see that these alternative movements kind of rising, and all of these people, the memes and all the energy and stuff, and they want to harness and get involved in that, but they're not willing to pay the price. To actually discuss controversial things. So it's they want to join the party, but then they're but I don't want to let's get rid of all this icky stuff, talk about race and sexism and all that. Let's get rid of all that icky talk, and then but yeah, we're against the establishment.
Rabbit, they'll say that they'll say they're against political correctness, but what they mean by that is they're just against otherkin. And insane transgenderism. It's their political correctness.
It's it's so flimsy. Because almost anyone, can attack these some of these fat blue-haired feminists or whatever that are just total freaks. Everyone hates them. So you're not paying any kind of price by being, being against there being 50 different genders or something like that. It's not. It's only barely scratching the surface. And when these people say that they're against political correctness, or they're against SJWs. Then when you talk to them for a bit, you find out that they really are SJWs.
Yeah,
because they'll be well, I
totally.
Yeah, there's a more moderate, mild version of it that does extreme version that still supported to some degree.
The people who threw me out of that group, the people who threw me out, those people are just SJWs who hate the more extreme SJWs, I guess. As far as I'm concerned, they're SJW entryists.
Well, the thing
is, need to disown them. Because if we're about anything, we're about anti-SJW. We can't have SJWs in all that. Sorry, no.
Yeah, well, I got into a bit of a flame one just earlier today because I wasn't going to kick Robert Lindsay off of my own page. I said, look, since getting rid of people because they say something that offends somebody is what we were rebelling against. I'm not doing it. And then some of these people come on and just say, oh, like I'm weak and I'm just not willing to take a stand. Apparently, they don't. Excuse me, I just did take a stand. I said nobody's getting kicked off of this site simply for saying, having an opinion that offends somebody. They don't. Some of them just don't seem to get what it is we're doing here. We're against
and I remember, Ryan had posted links to my site before in his Facebook group, and people just flipped out, and it was like, he's just being nice and giving like a round of different views from the alt left, and these people just like flipped out. And my first thought was like, okay, like these people are just like, they're not ready for this shit. They're not ready for an alternative.
I'm glad they threw me out. I deserve to get thrown out. And that group has 2 tranny moderators, and that's the same right there. You got a little Facebook group, and there's 2 trannies who are mods. I mean, trannies used to be rarest forwarded clovers. Now there's one on every block, man. I mean, that's just a symptom. That group is just a symptom of how insane culture left has gone.
Wait,
trannyism has gone up by 50 times. There's 50 times more trannies than there were.
Robert, Lindsay, you don't know that we live in the Weimar Republic?
Yeah, I don't belong there. That group is full of SJWs, and I need to leave there. Thank you for banning me. Thank you.
Brian, you have this concept of the regressive left, and you talk about there's a regressive version of the new left, a regressive version of the old left, and a regressive version of the alt left. Can you explain what you mean by that? Are you implying that the left wing of the alt right is the regressive alt left?
All of it is not, but I think it has the potential to sort of go back in that direction. I would say that we would be straying into that territory if we were to move away from an acceptance of biodiversity, say, and getting right into flat out Nazism or white supremacy or something like that.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but the question is who draws the line, because there's going to be, say, a lot of these entries come in, and then they'll say, like, we're the regressive alt-left. So the question is, like, that. I mean, that sounds reasonable, but who gets to decide, make these determinations?
Yeah.
Good question.
I saw someone posted, and they said, what's the alt-left? And someone said, oh, it's just the alt-right, except they like Mao a lot more than they like Hitler. Okay, that's right. Yeah, that's me, man. You got it.
Well, did you see? I saw in one of the groups there was this big chart, and it said, "Should we allow white nationalists and cultural conservatives?" Which basically means, should we allow Robert Lindsay? And then, like the chart was just like mostly no, but like I don't know if this person where does the polling data come from? Because the whole thing is, it's like, if there's white people that want to live with other white people, like, isn't it a leftist thing to like allow these people to like have self-determination? Like, where did we lose that? It's fucked up, because I feel like these people would say, if there was a bunch of black nationalists that are like, yeah, we want to have this area that's ours, they would all support it. But if there's a bunch of white people that say that, it's like, okay, no, we throw down the anti-white hammer.
Yeah, and I mean, a big part of the realization, for me anyways, is that I feel like a lot of these people are misguided, because they're dealing with people. They're giving people the benefit of the doubt, or something. But really, like, when you look at these things, it's only white people that even think in terms of colorblindness and like multiculturalism and everything. If you look at these other groups, like they all advocate for themselves like exclusively.
I mean, Black Lives Matter,
and a lot of these institutions, or whatever, like, they don't have any interest in assimilating into like Western institutions. You find like the occasional like oddball or contrarian blacks or something that are like that are people from other countries that just love Western civilization and stuff. But I think without looking at the demographic implications of these groups, that like if you just ignore that, then you're going to you're missing a huge part of it. And so that doesn't mean that you have to be like full-on white nationalist or Nazi or anything, but I think that recognizing the implications of demographics and how that affects a Western society is something that is definitely on the table.
Well, people bring their own culture with them. If you go to, if you go to a city, and also people like to be among people like them. People exist in enclaves, and if you go to a city where there are, it's mostly populated by a certain demographic, it's sort of their way that runs the show there. And that's just the way people operate. And I think we need to be honest about that.
Yeah, well, I think that what's happened is that over time there has been this real infiltration of white male guilt into leftist thinking. And how and why this has happened is a long story. We would get into stuff like the Frankfurt School and all of that. But, the bottom line is that where certain elements used to see white, European civilization as being superior, now they see it as being inferior. And that they have to sort of make up for colonialism and for fascism and all of these, historical bad things that have happened. And this mentality has just kind of crept into it, particularly in academia. So you end up with these reverse kind of double standards where it's okay for, blacks or Latinos or any of them to advocate for themselves, but not for European people of European descent, and the whole of the regressive left, as I call it, is infested with this, and it's really destroying, not just what it means to be left, but it's an existential threat to Western civilization, and by extent, the very prospect of the liberal goals that they profess to be in favor of.
I think one important issue to bring up that the alt-left has a unique niche at tackling is the issue of mass immigration, because the mass immigration affects a lot of issues that progressives care about, like workers' rights and the environment. But that issue has been delegated to the right wing.
Well, Bernie Sanders, he did have that Vox.com interview with, Ezra Klein, and he's just like, open borders, no, that's a right-wing proposal. No.
Well, that's true, but he later backed down on that under pressure.
Yeah, I know. He is a fucking cuck.
I mean, historically, mass immigration, was... it was a classic union-busting method. They would bring in scabs with no concept of labor, of working-class solidarity, and get them to replace striking workers, and that's it. The union's busted. It's the business class's favorite, favorite kind of leftism. Wall Street likes multiculturalism and mass immigration. You better believe it.
I think that there are great arguments against mass immigration. One of the things that I always argued with people in the alt-right about, especially like the post-libertarian crowd, was that they were they always blame other people for this mass immigration stuff, but the corporations are like a huge driving force among. That they are the ones that do all of the lobbying and everything. Besides these little groups or whatever, like the Rothschild, a big part of it is these corporations that that want cheap labor. And
yeah, I mean the alt-right will mention those groups like La Raza, but like where does their funding come from?
And also,
there are plenty of elements like in the alt-right that understand that, but it's like if you step back and look at the whole thing, you have to start seeing these corporations as not being loyal to the country, especially these larger corporations. They've become kind of their own global entities. They don't have any loyalty to any nation. So when they advocate for this stuff, like we need to bring these people in, it's like, okay, well, who do you mean we? Like you're paying taxes. Your company's paying taxes to like a foreign government. Like you don't even pay taxes here. So, are at what point are you even like an American company anymore?
Yeah, well, they're traitors. Well, in every nationalist movement, every revolutionary movement that came up, what happened was the bourgeois, the local businesses, I guess some of them supported, but a lot of times they just threw up their hands and surrendered real fast. They said, whoa, there's a revolution going on, man. You gotta stop. It's just bad for business. I mean, they don't want to change anything, man. And the business community in Palestine is allied with the Israelis because they're like, whoa, no revolution, man. No. Oh, I'm not getting enough people at my shop. So, they're not our allies, man. They're not the allies of the nation. The business class is always opposed to the country. The Vietnamese business class was anti-Vietnam, right? It was anti-nationalist. It's always anti-nationalist. They're always traitors, man. They're like the money.
They view human beings as totally interchangeable. And sometimes you go out and you meet.
Wasn't there that quote by Chomsky where Noam Chomsky said that capitalism was fundamentally anti-racist because of what you were saying, Alex, it views humans as interchangeable cogs?
Yeah, exactly. Homo economicus, right? That that the Enlightenment has just led us all to just being just interchangeable pegs. But really, what does this lead to? It leads to shaved heads and barcodes. And I just wanted to make an earlier point about La Raza. I think a problem that people like us can sometimes have is that we project ourselves onto other people. I really don't think that La Raza is popular amongst Latinos. I think there is a certain subset of the Latino population that is politically radical in a left-wing way, but I would say a lot of these people are just apolitical, and they're looking to just, make money for their family or send money back to Mexico or Guatemala or wherever they come from. I think that a lot of people who, maybe some people say, they shouldn't be in this country because they're taking jobs away from Americans, like illegal immigrants or whatnot. I just don't think these people are politically aware on any level.
Well, I think that they're tribally
sure that totally
because they vote as a block. And I live in Phoenix, so I mean I know this, I see it. They're to the extent that these people vote, they're largely like one issue voters, kind of similar to how blacks will largely vote on who's the more favorable candidate for blacks. Like Obama, who is black. They vote for him in overwhelming numbers.
Well, black people just are basically told to vote Democrat. There's this idea that the Democrat Party is going to save you. The Republican Party is racist, and then the neocons will retort that with their DR3 Democrats are the real racist strategy. But I think that's probably the black issue. There is they're just always going to vote for Democrats because they've been told forever that Republicans are racist.
Right. Well, I mean, one thing that I wanted to mention is that you have, going back to talking about capitalism, is whenever you see these articles in National Review and also in a lot of Vox and these kind of other neoliberal publications, is They always talk about like the poor white male is, these people are really hurting, and it's like if we should just take care of these people, then they'd get on board. And I find that to be really insulting because like their whole entire focus is based on the fact that like, that your value is just like, is in money. Like how much money you have is like a National Review, especially like this policy is better because it makes people richer and stuff. And it's like,
it kind of reminds me of those comments made by, Hillary, like what Hillary Clinton said about how Bernie Sanders supporters were all a bunch of like losers who lived in their parents' basement in the WikiLeaks scandal, and also with that who was that conservative guy who said
Rick Wilson, his classic comment about masturbating in the basement to anime porn. Yeah, definitely. But Rabbit,
the thing is, it's like, Well, I just want to say the thing is that like, a lot of people I don't care about money. You know what I mean? Like, even if I was like super rich, like my views would be that money isn't necessarily everyone's number one priority for how they consider themselves successful as a person. Like, who cares? Like, I live near Scottsdale, and when I come here, like, I look at the people and I see like the stuff that they're wearing and that they're into and stuff, and like, I feel sorry for them because they're just into such like
their consumerist drones,
like vapid shit. That it's like, I definitely don't see them as like above me as a person.
Oh yeah,
just because they're wealthy. I think they're into garbage. Like,
well,
I feel sorry for them.
The whole thing is like, I can go over to New York and I can find interesting people over there, but I find a lot of the people like you're talking about. But I bet you if you go over to Kiev, Ukraine, and people are, you have $200 a month rent, you'd probably have a good life because there's a sense of community, or like thumos, or the people feel like one with one another. And I think that's what makes a better society, is when people feel connected to one another. I agree with you. I don't think money is really that important. I think it's a sense of community that's more important, because it's about sort of helping.
And also your own
the way society is set up. So in order to function in society and get by, people need to constantly be in debt, and that kind of goes back to what Ryan was saying earlier, how the whole sort of libertarian concept of freedom, how people being in debt or having to live paycheck to paycheck, that's not a freedom. The libertarian conservative notion of freedom is fundamentally flawed.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing really new about any of this. I just want to read something to you very briefly here. The bourgeoisie, wherever it has got the upper hand, has put an end to all feudal, patriarchal, and idyllic relations. It has pitilessly torn asunder the motley feudal ties that bind man to his natural superiors, and has left remaining no other nexus between man and man than that of naked self-interest, than callous cash payment. It has drowned the most heavenly ecstasies of religious fervor, of chivalrous enthusiasm, of Philistine sentimentalism in the icy water of egotistical calculation. It has resolved personal worth into exchange value, and in place of the numberless, indefeasible chartered freedoms, it has set up that single unconscionable freedom, free trade. In one word, for exploitation veiled by religious and political illusions, it has substituted naked, shameless, direct, brutal exploitation. The bourgeoisie has torn away from the family its sentimental veil and has reduced the family relation to mere money relations. Manifesto of the Communist Party, 1848. It's rapacious wherever it goes. It reduces everything to financial calculation. Yeah, how much money are you worth?
Ryan, what do you think about groups like national, like Bolsheviks? Do they fit into the alt-left?
I think in some ways they would almost be, they're the 140 proof alt-left, really, if anything is.
Or there's also like Strasserites, and there's that whole that organization like New Resistance. If you're familiar with them.
I've heard of groups like that. I my leanings aren't there. I think that's kind of the outer, like that's the extreme element of us, maybe. But yes, a very strong communitarian streak runs through it.
There was that whole poll that was brought up about whether like people who were say pro-white should be welcomed, but there was also a poll that said whether social conservatives should be welcomed. Like a good example of that would be a lot of the like poor whites in places like West Virginia who are like anti-abortion and generally hold like religious or socially conservative views.
I don't know if really being in or out of the alt-left per se would be maybe the best way to look at it. I think that people like that, you might be able to ally with them on certain issues. But even within the realm of social conservative, I don't think you have natural unity, and in some respects, you have some conflicting interests.
Ryan, there are people though. See, the whole problem is like we're coming at a lot of these ideas from like a rational perspective, and there are these people out there that are on the fringe, on the left. There's a lot of them who would say that you are a social conservative because you're not like you don't suck otherkin penis every night,
Oh yeah. Actually, I think it should be a wing. I think it should be a wing of the alt-left. It should be called social conservatives or something. Because there's all these. Remember all the working class white people, all the Reagan Democrats, and all the union guys. Yeah, they're rednecks, man. They're rednecks. They're kind of sexist. They're kind of they're racist. Yeah, they're kind of racist. Yeah. They like gays? No, they don't like faggots too much. About trannies, so let's not even go there. Yeah, I mean, they're just redneck, blue-collar guys. Now they've been voting Republican for what, 30, 40 years or something? Look, man, let's bring them back. The Democratic Party has no place for these people. We should. I'm an economic man. If those guys are left-wing on economics, I'll take them, man.
Yeah,
I don't care about any of that.
I in a lot of ways, I relate to that. Like I'm from North Jersey, and a lot of a lot of people are in that kind of category, like the blue collar Democrats. But that's kind of like the ilk around me. But a lot of these people, they just shipped it over to Trump now because he just represents.
Yeah,
that. He is that.
Yeah, let's bring them back, man.
Yeah, that's me. I mean, like basically, Kevin Williamson in National Review, he told us to just die. These people just want to get rid of us. They want us to die. So, fuck them. We have to say we're here, we're queer, and they better get used to it.
We are at the end of the show. Ryan, is there anything else you'd like to add about these topics before I wrap things up?
Nothing comes to mind. I think we had a good chat here. Thank you for having me.
Ryan, thanks for being on, and also thanks Alex and Rabbit and Robert Lindsay.
Ryan, great to talk to you.
Great talking, guys.